Well, it seems like it's over. That Max Verstappen's practically guaranteed to be leading Red Bull. In the future, of course. But there is a twist to this, which I think he and Fernando might like. Because with the way things are going, Papa Stroll might be able to offer Max far more than Christian Horner ever could. Okay, I get it. You're probably sick to your stomach regarding the speculation regarding Max's future in Formula 1. I understand your frustration. But now I've had some time to think about it, and based on the terms and conditions of Adrian Newey heading for Aston Martin's F1 operation, and maybe the company at large, not only is this making me think that they could offer a really compelling seat for the Dutchman in terms of their Formula 1 operation, but they might be able to offer him even more that, a secure pathway, a route to world endurance, something of which Max Verstappen has made no bones about, it being his next port of call should he bore about single-seaters. Now you could interpret Adrian Newey going to Aston Martin for big bucks as some sort of cash grab, just making the most out of his name and getting one big payout before he retires for good in about 5 years' time. That's the length of his contract. However, as we saw in the press conference, it's more than just him becoming an employee of Aston Martin Racing. No, he and Papa Stroll will effectively be equals in terms of the direction of the team. Papa Stroll rated Adrian as a partner and a shareholder. And judging from Lance Stroll's radio message literally during FP1 as I'm recording this video saying this is not a car, in the words of Rocky Balboa, Aston Martin are probably just crying out, Adrian! This team will be his playground for as long as he can hold a pencil to tinker with not just F1 cars, but also with hypercars, with the latest toys he can get his hands on, with no restrictions when it comes to budget, facilities, and personnel, no Cold War era wind tunnels in sight. It's probably an even bigger eye-opening chapter in his career than it was when he made the jump from McLaren to Red Bull, going from an established classic team within Formula 1 to a brand new team with very little to go on, who actually could offer him everything that he wanted and then maybe more. But this, going to Aston Martin, it's even bigger than that. Red Bull agreed to his conditions with little resistance after Ron Dennis's work environment had irked the designer one time too many. However, with Aston Martin, it's on a whole other scale of freedom and scope, as well as other things to play with. I've said it before, and I will say it again. Don't be surprised in a couple of years' time, you see Adrian Newey's pencil actually have some influence over Aston Martin's road cars. You mark my words. And one of these cars might find a place in Max Verstappen's garage. It's reported to be about worth $6 million in terms of cars, with half of that taken up by his own iteration of an Aston Martin Valkyrie. And yes, you heard me right. He owns Max Verstappen, a Valkyrie. And it's not just that Aston that the Dutchman owns, but he has a DB11, a DBS Superleggera, and a Vantage. Clearly, Max has a liking for Aston Martins, which he's seemingly kept around since the Mark worked with Red Bull prior to Honda coming along around about 2018. Now, okay, you might be thinking, oh Law, you're just flip-flopping. For the longest time you thought he was going to be going to Mercedes. You were talking about what they could offer him, how the board of directors had given the green light for Toto to pursue Max Verstappen in terms of getting him to lead the team. Recently, Toto has been pouring cold water on that, especially for 2025 and maybe even for 2026. No one's quite sure what Max Verstappen's going to do, whether or not he would even see out his existing contract with Red Bull. And that's not helped by the fact that George Russell, in his own honest opinion, says that, oh, he's got at least 15 to 20 years left in Formula 1, so he's not going anywhere. Well, George, that's a little bit early to be assuming that. Come back to me when you're 35 years old, then we'll talk about getting into your 40s. Now, even though the power unit of Mercedes reportedly is one of the strongest in development, and the new rules are slated to be headed back in the favour of power rather than aero, that might not be enough. The culture of Brackley doesn't really seem to mesh well with Verstappen, whereas with George and now slowly with Kimi, it just works. They've built the brand around Russell. And even though Mercedes might be willing to part with $60, $70, $80 million a year for Verstappen, I don't think that's a big enough motivator for Verstappen. Money. He also needs to have a car and a team that will work with him and, most importantly, listen to him, which is something that Red Bull has not really been doing, and he's been talking about this multiple times, that the team have not listened to him. Lewis Hamilton's over there in the corner just nodding his head saying, yep, now you know how it feels, man. Which is why, when asked about joining Aston Martin now that Newey had moved there, Max was not exactly stamping out the speculation. He said that it would be something that he would think about in the future, but not in the here and now. And that is quite the reasonable diplomatic answer. Whilst it wasn't a definitive yes, it wasn't a categorical no. He didn't dismiss the situation. And he's just saying, well, right now, I've got no reason to leave Red Bull. Maybe in the future we might be working together, but that's not something we're going to be talking about right now. And based on the trajectory of Aston Martin, he is right to be a little bit distant thinking about the future. It's not like he's suddenly going to go, oh, cool, Adrian made up his mind, I'll just go there, mate. The basic point is that Max will stick around with a team that he believes can win races and can come back from adversity with full confidence in his own feedback. Whilst that's rung true for the longest time over at Red Bull, and he could count on that operation, over the last couple of years, the team that has been around him, that he has cultivated since he was just 18 years old, when he took part at the Spanish Grand Prix in 2016, is starting to dissipate. It's not quite the same. It's probably a little bit of a shock. The familiar no longer being familiar. And sure, Verstappen will be able to just shake it off for the time being, but over time, this will start to aggravate. And even though Red Bull have been quick to downplay the lack of Adrian Newey, and even Verstappen is getting on that train, being diplomatic and a little bit casual, saying, oh, no, it's not that, no, it's not that, it's fine. No, come on, let's be real here. Without his oversight, they have been stumbling, because Adrian quit after the Japanese Grand Prix. That was when their last effective upgrade went on the car, which actually gave them some meaningful lap time. But whilst Max was careful with his words, his right-hand man Helmut Marko was a lot more candid when he talked to Austrian publication Kleine Zeitung and thought that nobody would be paying attention. Well, I've got news for you, Helmut. People do pay attention, including myself. And this is the quote that he had to say to the reporters in Austria, right here. Ahem. Max drives where he can win. Aston Martin has the most modern factory, the wind tunnel will be operational next year, and Honda engines will be added to that. Everything fits. And if you look at history, it is clear. Wherever Newey has gone, there has been an upward trend. I don't know why it should be any different at Aston Martin. Oh, Helmut, oh! Max is being diplomatic. Helmut's now actually saying what Max is probably thinking. He's just going, oh yeah, that team makes sense. Oh, they'll probably win soon. Max wants to be at a place where he can win. And you can tell that Marko realizes that he was kind of downing on Red Bull, so he then backpedals slightly and says that Max can still win titles with his current team, as well as bring up a very important point that many people, including F1's own social media admins, fail to recognize. I have seen this countless times, from people thinking that, oh, just because Adrian Newey is going to be starting work in 2025, that Fernando Alonso will get his 33rd victory in 2025. It's not as simple as that, my friend, and allow me to explain. For starters, Adrian Newey is on that pesky thing called gardening leave, and granted, Christian Horner could have made it a lot more difficult by making sure that gardening leave lasted all the way through 2027. That was when he could start work, but now he can actually start work in 2025 due to the whole conditions and what they were able to agree upon. But just 2 weeks before the first Grand Prix of 2025, meaning the development of the AMR 25, he'll have no hand in it. And besides, his talents and, of course, money will be put towards the AMR 26, the brand new regulations, which also have had some slight development done before the FIA and Formula One banned development on it to cut down costs and to make things fair for smaller teams, because bigger teams fly in development because it's not related to the cost cap. So even then, in 2026, it won't be a full-on Newey design. It'll be mostly his, but 2027 will be the first year where you can say, yes, that is the first Aston Martin car that has Adrian Newey's signature all over it. Or will we? Because in this situation, Newey is going to be the technical managing partner, meaning he is the boss of a super team, of super heads that used to be the top banana over at their respective teams. Dan Fallows was high up at Red Bull, he was the head of Aston Martin, now he's going to be working under Newey, something he thought he would never be doing. Then there's Enrico Cardile, there are other people as well, so they've got to really be working in synergy, or else it's going to be an absolute mess, so that's something we've got to be cautious about. There is a lot of risk here, but also a lot of reward if it pays off. That could tempt Max, seeing how serious the team is in wanting to kick on for the new rule set. But Marko is right in that moving right this second for Max does not make sense. Sure, they've got the new facilities and wind tunnel coming online round about now, whereas Red Bull will have to wait another 3 years before they get their new kit, it will take Aston Martin time for them to manifest results on track. However, there are other reasons why Max Verstappen might consider a move to Aston Martin in a couple of years' time, maybe even sooner. It's become very clear that Adrian Newey has not been a happy bunny over at Red Bull for the longest time, maybe upwards of a decade, ever since the turbo hybrid era began, when they underinvested in the V6 engine, the power unit, and they just were down on power, they were unreliable, and Red Bull went from being constructors and champions from the driver's title to complete no-hopers. That was partly why Sebastian left, as well as, of course, Daniel Ricciardo getting on top of that car. It was an absolute mess, and Adrian Newey was so disillusioned with that and the FIA constantly on his case about banning his innovations and banning his creations that he went to part-time effectively, and was then told, oh no, wait, Adrian, stay. If you join our Applied Technologies division, you can make other stuff, which is now manifested in not just multiple things for that company, but also in Red Bull's own hypercar, the effective successor to the Valkyrie over at Aston Martin when they were working together, the RB17. Why is it called the RB17? Well, for starters, Adrian reckons that it could be just as fast as a Formula 1 car, but of course the 2021 car, which should have been the RB17, wasn't called that due to the rules, due to the Rona meant that you had to carry over the chassis from 2020, which was the RB16, so that's the RB16B, it was effectively a B-spec. Now, okay, that's all very well and good. It's the culmination of everything that Adrian Newey knows up until this point, and a cornerstone of what Red Bull Applied Technologies can do. What's its ultimate purpose, though? Is Red Bull suddenly deciding, you know what, we're going to take part in world endurance because everyone else is, and we've got the likes of Hyundai and their Genesis mark going ahead for next year, so that's another piranha in the tank. So is Red Bull going to join that party? Well, no. It's mostly going to be sold to billionaires and multimillionaires as a vanity thing, because I think it's worth $6 million or something. They're only making 48 of them. So really, it's just a vanity project. So we probably might not see the RB17 save for some demonstration runs, or if one of those rich people decides to be frisky and show it around Goodwood or something. And to be fair, the Valkyrie was destined for a similar fate. Since Red Bull parted ways with Aston Martin, the car was practically mothballed until Aston Martin decided to do something with it. But now the decision to revive it for world endurance makes perfect sense now they've got Adrian working with them directly. I bet you from day one and going forward, whenever he's not working on the AMR 26 with his team, he's going to be ploughing in time to looking at what's going on with the Valkyrie, update it, and then go from there. Maybe even have a look at some road cars and provide some critiques or something like that. And even though he's not going to be taking technical drawings or CAD information from Red Bull, because obviously that's illegal and of course immoral, as we've seen in the past, Adrian Newey has a lot of information in his head and a lot of doodles that he makes in his spare time when he's just thinking about the rule set in general. And this is where Max Verstappen comes in, my friends, so thank you for your patience, and if you liked what I had to say, maybe even give the video a like. It's clear that Aston Martin's future, not just in motorsport but also in the automotive sector as well, will evolve around Adrian's work. They were so committed to getting him that even Fernando himself offered to pledge a chunk of his own salary to realise his dream of working with his long-term rival, albeit him never driving an F1 car in a Grand Prix, even though he has driven a Formula 1 car. Now that is a pretty big deal for a star like Fernando, to sacrifice effectively a couple of $1 million of his own pay packet to ensure they get an engineer. So no wonder Fernando is happy. He's the happiest he has been in a long time. Certainly this year. Nothing can bring him down now. He just has to wait out the clock. He's even said he's going to stay in Formula 1 for as long as necessary, so long as he can be working with Adrian Newey and he can drive one of his cars. And he said that whatever happens after 2026, I'll be driving. And that makes me think that maybe he might think, oh, okay, I'm done with Formula 1. But that doesn't necessarily mean he is done with Aston Martin. He might be headed off to the World Endurance Division, considering he has so much experience and glory with the likes of Toyota Gazoo Racing. So he'll be easily sent off there for the World Endurance Division after that. And he'll still get to be driving an Adrian Newey designed car. So he's going to be welcoming each scenario with a very big grin. And yes, securing Max Verstappen along with him will take some time to manifest, but the pieces of the puzzle are falling into place, and will be helped greatly should Aston Martin do well in WEC and next year's Le Mans 24 Hours. Max will pay close attention to that project, as we all know. He has a huge passion for and talent for endurance racing. And as we all remember, that's what got him in hot water with the British media when he stayed up a little bit past his bedtime to help out Team Redline in securing a victory in the Spa 24 Hours or something like a sim race. And also, let's just make it clear, he wasn't doing this for giggles or anything like that for selfish reasons. He was doing it to help out one of his team, doing a solid because he couldn't take part, so Max stepped in, even though it did compromise him in terms of his mood during the Hungarian Grand Prix. He was being helpful, man. And also why I think this might be a viable solution for him to partner with Aston Martin in endurance is because, yeah, sure, Max will probably go into World Endurance and come up with his own team. He has the capital to do it. He can maybe get on the blower to Ferrari, since he already owns a Ferrari GT car, and say, hey, I want to take part. He'll get the sponsors. People will be falling head over heels to get to partner with Max Verstappen in his next career, which he'll probably be doing all the way through into his mid-40s or something. We could see Max Verstappen in World Endurance longer than he was in Formula 1. But why would he do all of that work when he could just shack up with Papa Stroll and Adrian Newey and just become the leader of the World Endurance division? And even though Verstappen has been towing the party line of Red Bull and playing down Newey's departure as being a reason as to the team going sideways as of late, now it's important to say sideways, not worse, because the RB20 is still faster than the RB19. It's just Red Bull has sort of just plodded along, whereas everyone else has just shot right up. Marko's comments do ring true, and they really, Red Bull, hoped that nobody would pay attention to what Marko was saying, because he was brutally honest, just going, yeah, Max will go to a team that is winning, or could win, or has potential, or will give him what he wants. So, yeah, that's the bare bones of it, really. He was just laying things down on the table, because Red Bull, their appeal is slowly diminishing. And if Aston Martin proves to have gotten the new regulations correct, and both Fernando and Lance are bagging podiums and even wins consistently, that will be enough to get a deal on the table properly. And if the WEC division performs decently or better, he might just Max skip F1 altogether and move to endurance racing, especially if the new rule set doesn't float his boat and he hates it. Because the thing about this is, though, is that the Valkyrie is not an unknown quantity to Max. He knows exactly what goes into a Valkyrie because he probably helped develop it when it was a concept. And also, he owns one, as does Fernando now. So they are now Valkyrie buddies, and now they can be discussing what goes on and what makes their car tick and how quickly they can do a drag race. Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if that happens around Monaco. They'll just go to a back street and do a drag race in their Valkyries. Oh, naughty, naughty. Papa Stroll could secure Verstappen's talents for world endurance success for the long term, as the current rule set is clearly appealing to car brands, and there's room for further improvement as the series grows. If Max were to go there with Aston Martin, then millions more fans will leap over to that series to watch it alongside F1, or ditch F1 entirely. And on top of that, we could see Fernando and Max become a dream team, something of which they've been talking about incessantly. They love the idea of endurance racing. They've talked so many times about maybe working together in the not too distant future or something like that. Charles Leclerc has also said that he would love to do Le Mans. So imagine that. Charles, Max, Fernando, drivers that respect one another. Oh, that would be a magnificent team, but let's be real here. They probably want an experienced endurance driver to go along with them. I mean, Fernando is experienced, and Max does know a thing or two in terms of computers and sim racing and whatnot, and also dab hand in terms of real life, but surely they might want someone a little bit more experienced to be the third guy. For Max, should he be persuaded to race with Stroll's team, he would have the thing that Christian Horner lives by: stability and continuity. Ironic, yeah? He would have a direct pathway to endurance racing should he remain in F1, and it would mean he would continue to have a car designed by Adrian Newey, someone he values like he were family. And based on that original comment, he said that he would work with Aston Martin, he would consider it, but not right now. That doesn't necessarily mean it could be F1 solely or exclusively, or as part of a two-stage thing. He might be just looking at the World Endurance thing and go, yeah, I might work with them again, maybe for that, because the Valkyrie's really cool. And he could maybe have some fun, and he would get a straight line into that sport without having to do any legwork. Whatever happens, Papa Stroll will have done what he wanted to do and secure Verstappen. And why not? Because world endurance is getting more and more prestigious, because you've got Ferrari in there, you're getting Hyundai in there, all the big car makers are there now, and they're enjoying it. Porsche is back in there. I wouldn't be surprised if Audi eventually comes back. So hey, Aston Martin, be frisky, go for the Indy 500, go for the Triple Crown, something that only McLaren has done. So partner up with Honda, make a British Racing Green IndyCar or something like that, because Adrian Newey does have connections to IndyCar and kart from the 80s. That's where he cut his teeth. And even though, yes, IndyCar is a spec series now, I wouldn't be surprised if Adrian just tags along to go there for giggles. And as for Lance Stroll, what happens to him should Max be swayed? It depends. If Aston Martin does produce a car that is fast and up there in 2026, then Lance will need to make the most of it. If he doesn't, whereas Fernando is able to do so, then I think Papa Stroll will face pressure from the shareholders and partners of Aston Martin to change the lineup, do something. This isn't 2019 anymore, where Lawrence Stroll had total control of the team and could do basically whatever he wanted, because he was the saviour of that team that was looking to go bankrupt and go insolvent. Now though, there are so many other parties involved in Aston Martin and them getting up to where they are now in terms of having the best facilities on the grid. There are brand new investors. Papa Stroll is looking to sell up to 30% of the team to make sure they can refinance the debt on the factory to make sure that it's good and it's maintainable, sustainable even. Aramco's there and Honda's there, they've got big visions, and if Lance Stroll, with all the extra attention, cannot do the deed and help Aston Martin to be competitive for the constructors in 2026 or 2027, then it's going to make things all the more difficult. And if Max Verstappen is right there and he comes a-knocking, and Fernando Alonso is still there and he still wants to be in F1, well then they've either got to just drop Lance entirely or send him off to World Endurance first and then go from there. And considering that Adrian Newey is going to be a significant part of Aston Martin's F1 future, I'm pretty sure that if Lance can't make good on a design that Newey made, then Adrian himself might have reservations about Stroll still driving one of his cars. This isn't just a standard boss employee model, this is going to be a serious consideration for Papa Stroll. But the roadmap for Max headed to that team, it seems a lot more obvious than ever. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. And let me know what you think about the situation over at McLaren in the comments as well, and something that I elaborate on in this video here that you can go and watch next. It seems that McLaren might not have as much faith in Lando Norris as many people would have thought. And yeah, Oscar, brace yourself, the British media are coming, they're coming!